Yeah. Haven't seen too many around lately. Been tough lately for dreamers. Say dreaming's dead. No one does it anymore. The dreamer's banished to obscurity. Well, I'm trying to change all that, and I hope you are too. By dreaming every day. Dreaming with our hands and dreaming with our minds. Our planet is facing the greatest problems it's ever faced. Ever. So whatever you do, don't be bored. This is absolutely the most exciting time we could have possibly hoped to be alive. And things are just starting.
All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into the mind of René Descartes.
Yeah, diving headfirst into some serious philosophical waters.
We've got excerpts from his Meditations on First Philosophy, which I have to say is a pretty intense title.
It's not exactly light reading.
It's where he really digs into these fundamental questions.
Really lays out his whole philosophical system.
And alongside that, we've got this article from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to give us a bit of context.
Yeah, it's always helpful to get a broader perspective, right? See where someone's coming from.
Totally. So we're not just stuck in Descartes' head, though I'm sure it's a fascinating place to be.
A bit of a philosophical maze, but a fun one to explore.
So where do we even begin with a thinker like Descartes? What's the one big idea we should really grasp?
Well, Descartes was all about starting from scratch, questioning everything.
He wasn't afraid to shake things up a bit.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He realized that a lot of what we take for granted, what we think we know, might not be on such solid ground.
It's like he was questioning the very foundation of knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like you wouldn't build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand.
That's a recipe for disaster, for sure.
And that's kind of what he was getting at. He wasn't saying, go through life believing nothing. He was searching for that bedrock, that unshakable truth.
So how did he go about finding it? He went to some pretty extreme lengths, right? Like doubting his own senses.
Oh, yeah. He really took things to the limit.
In the Meditations, he even talks about the possibility of an evil demon tricking him, making him believe things that aren't real.
It sounds a little out there, I know.
Like, was he serious with that?
Well, it was a thought experiment, a way to push the boundaries of what we can know for certain.
Because our senses can deceive us, right? Like with optical illusions.
Exactly. They're a perfect example of how our senses can be tricked.
So even something as basic as what we see and hear can't be fully trusted.
Not according to Descartes.
Oh man, it was just like one of those life-altering experiences. I mean, I could never really look at the world the same way again after that.
Yeah, but I mean, how did you finally get out of the dream? See, that's my problem. I'm trapped. I keep thinking that I'm waking up, but I'm still in a dream. It seems like it's going on forever. I can't get out of it, and I want to wake up for real. How do you really wake up?
I don't know. I'm not very good at that anymore. But if that's what you're thinking, I mean, you probably should. I mean, if you can wake up, you should. Because, someday, you won't be able to. So just, but it's easy. Just wake up.
True love will find you in the end.
He was trying to find something deeper, more fundamental than that.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because even when he's doubting everything, he has this breakthrough. He realizes, I can't doubt that I'm doubting.
It's his aha moment.
And that's where his famous line comes in, right? I think, therefore I am.
The cornerstone of his philosophy. He's saying that the very act of doubting, of thinking, proves that there's a thinker doing the doubting.
So he's kind of reverse engineering his own existence, finding the one thing he can be absolutely sure of.
Exactly. Even if he's being tricked by an evil demon, even if the whole world is an illusion, the fact that he's thinking means he must exist in some way.
It's a powerful realization.
It's the foundation upon which he rebuilds his entire understanding of knowledge and reality.
As the pattern gets more intricate and subtle, being swept along is no longer enough.
But hold on, we go from I think, therefore I am, to proving that God exists. That feels like a big jump.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And this is where things get a little more complex. But essentially, Descartes argues that the very idea of God as a perfect, infinite being points to his existence.
I'm not sure I follow. How does that work?
Well, he starts by talking about different kinds of ideas we have. Some ideas, he says, are invented, like unicorns.
Okay, I can get behind that. Never seen a unicorn myself.
Right, and some ideas come from our senses, like the feeling of warmth from a fire.
Makes sense. But then there are these other ideas, like the idea of God, which Descartes calls innate ideas.
Exactly. He believed these ideas are somehow imprinted on our minds, not learned or experienced through our senses.
Innate. You mean like they're pre-programmed into us, like some kind of built-in software?
That's a great way to put it. And here's the crucial part. Descartes argues that we, as finite, imperfect beings, couldn't have come up with the idea of an infinite, perfect God on our own.
So you're saying that because we can imagine something perfect, something infinite, that means it must exist somewhere.
That's the gist of his argument, yes. He believed that the very concept of God is evidence for his existence.
No, okay. That's a lot to process.
It's a bold claim, no doubt, and it's one that's been debated for centuries. But whether you agree with him or not, you have to admit, a fascinating way to think about the nature of reality and where our ideas come from.
It really makes you think.
15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Pick another number. 6. Okay. Dream is destiny.
If we didn't come up with these ideas ourselves, where did they come from? Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, I can wrap my head around this idea of God existing because we can conceive of perfection.
It's a big leap for sure.
But if God is perfect and he created our minds, then why do we make mistakes? Why isn't everything we think, like, automatically brilliant and true?
That's a great question. And you know what? It's surprisingly relevant to us even now.
You think Descartes had something to say about, like, my tendency to accidentally hit reply all on emails?
Maybe not email specifically, but he definitely addressed the issue of human error. He says, God gave us free will, right? The ability to make choices, to judge things.
Okay, so we've got choices. That's usually a good thing.
It is. But here's where things get tricky, according to Descartes. He says our errors, our mistakes, come from judging things we don't fully understand. We jump the gun, basically.
So it's like scrolling through social media and forming an opinion based on a headline without, actually reading the article.
Perfect example. And Descartes was warning about this kind of thing way back when. He was all about careful consideration, focusing on what's clear and certain, not just jumping to conclusions based on incomplete information.
He'd probably be horrified by the internet.
He might have a hard time with Twitter, that's for sure. But his point is still so valid. It's all about cultivating that intellectual humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers and being careful about what we choose to believe.
It's almost like he's giving us a blueprint for navigating the information age.
And, he didn't just call out our tendency to rush to judgment. He also criticized people who try to sound smart by challenging established ideas without really understanding them.
Oof, that's a burn. So it's not enough to just question everything. We have to actually put in the work to understand it.
Precisely. It's about being thoughtful, not just contrarian.
All know the function of the media has never been to eliminate the evils of the world. No. Their job is to persuade us to accept those evils and get used to living with them. The powers that be want us to be passive observers. Hey, you got a match? And they haven't given us any other options outside the occasional, purely symbolic, participatory act of voting. You want the puppet on the right or the puppet on the left? I feel that the time has come to project my own inadequacies and dissatisfactions into the socio-political and scientific schemes. To let my own lack of a voice be heard.
But here's the other thing I keep coming back to. Descartes started this whole thing by doubting his senses, right?
Yeah, that was his whole starting point.
So how do we get from there to actually believing in a physical world outside of our own minds? Like, are we stuck in the matrix of Descartes' imagination?
That's what I've been wondering. Did he ever address that? It seems like a pretty big loose end.
Well, he does. He reasons that God wouldn't deceive us with completely fake sensory experiences.
Wait, so no evil demon controlling our every move?
Not according to Descartes. He believed that since our senses are generally reliable, we don't usually walk into walls thinking they're open doorways, there must be an actual external world that our senses are picking up on, even if imperfectly.
So it's a balancing act, I guess. Trusting our senses, but also using our judgment to figure out what's real.
Exactly.
Your get along, a little lift on down the line. Yeah, actually, I was waiting for a cab or something, but if you want to...
All right, don't miss the boat.
Hey, thanks.
Not a problem. Anchors away! So what do you think of my little vessel? She's what we call seaworthy, S-E-E, see with your eyes. I feel like my transport should be an extension of my personality. Voila. And this is like my little window to the world, and every minute's a different show. Now, I may not understand it, I may not even necessarily agree with it, but I'll tell you what, I accept it and just sort of glide along. You want to keep things on an even keel, I guess is what I'm saying. You want to go with the flow. The sea refuses no river. The idea is to remain in a state of constant departure while always arriving. It saves on introductions and goodbyes. The ride does not require an explanation, just occupants. That's where you guys come in. It's like you come onto this planet with a crayon box. Now, you may get the 8-pack, you may get the 16-pack, but it's all in what you do with the crayons, the colors that you're given. And don't worry about drawing within the lines or coloring outside the lines. I say color outside the lines, you know what I mean? Color right off the page. Don't box me in. We're in motion to the ocean. We are not landlocked, I'll tell you that. So, where do you want out?
Who, me? My first? I don't know, really anywhere is fine.
Well, just give me an address or something, okay?
Tell you what, go up 3 more streets, take a right, go 2 more blocks, drop this guy off on the next corner.
Where's that?
Well, I don't know either, but it's somewhere, and it's going to determine the course of the rest of your life. All ashore that's going ashore. Doot, doot.
And this whole idea that God wouldn't create a world designed to fool us actually became a foundation for modern science.
Hold on, seriously. Descartes, the OG doubter, helped pave the way for science. How does that even work?
It's because he introduced this idea of a real, consistent world out there, ripe for investigation. Before that, the idea of a deceitful or magical world held more sway. By arguing our senses, while flawed, are generally trustworthy because a good God wouldn't create a fake world, Descartes made a case for trusting scientific inquiry.
It's like he's saying, okay, there's a real world out there, go explore it, but, maybe double check things before you jump to conclusions.
Exactly, and that's a pretty good summary of Descartes' philosophy in a nutshell. He acknowledged the limitations of our senses, but ultimately argued for a consistent and knowable reality.
And that belief in a knowable reality, that's what made modern science possible. Why?
Right. He's full of surprises, that's for sure. It makes you wonder how he'd react to things like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, all this technology that's blurring the lines between the real and the virtual.
Now that you mention it, it's kind of mind-blowing. It's like he predicted the whole metaverse debate centuries ago. It really is mind-blowing when you think about it. Descartes was grappling with these questions about what's real, what we can know, centuries before virtual reality was even a thing.
He was ahead of his time in so many ways.
Totally. It's like he set the stage for all these debates we're having now about technology, artificial intelligence, the nature of reality itself.
Yeah, it all comes back to that emphasis on the power of the mind, right? Questioning, thinking critically.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Descartes' whole deal with radical doubt, his argument for the existence of God, his take on why we make mistakes, how he circles back to this idea of a physical reality that we can actually investigate.
It's a wild ride through some of the biggest questions humans have ever asked.
And through it all, there's this thread of think for yourself, but don't be naive, which honestly feels like the perfect motto for the internet age.
It really does. And it's interesting because the Stanford Encyclopedia article mentions how Descartes' ideas have sparked debate on so many other topics too, not just like the existence of God, but even things like the nature of consciousness, the equality of women.
Wow, I didn't realize his influence was so far-reaching.
He really did set off these philosophical shockwaves that are still being felt centuries later.
A true philosopher for the ages.
Absolutely. Still making us think and debate and question everything.
Which is probably exactly what he would have wanted. So that's our deep dive into the mind of René Descartes. We started with doubt, explored the idea of God, grappled with human error, and even touched on the nature of reality itself.
And we saw how his ideas, written centuries ago, are maybe even more relevant today as we navigate this world of information overload and ever-evolving technology.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, but if there's one big takeaway from Descartes, I think it's that call to think critically, to question everything.
And to trust your own judgment, even when everyone else seems certain.
Wise words for any age. So next time you're scrolling through your feed or questioning what's real in a world of deepfakes and virtual reality, remember René Descartes, the OG philosopher influencer, reminding us to think deeply, question everything, and trust our own judgment. Until next time on The Deep Dive.
Hey, old man, what you doing up there?
I'm not sure.
You need any help getting down, sir?
No, I don't think so.
Stupid bastard.
No worse than us. He's all action and no theory. We're all theory and no action.